The Grand Nexus floated in the darkness of space like a massive crystal palace. It orbited a neutron star called Valdris Prime, and its walls glowed with strange light from 1,000 different worlds. Inside the main chamber, representatives from 847 alien species waited in silence. Some had scales, some had fur, and some were made of living crystal or gas. They all watched the doors with nervous eyes. Captain Taeyong Kim stood beside Ambassador Hana Park at the entrance. His uniform was crisp and clean, bearing the symbol of Earth's unified government. Hana wore a simple black suit, her hair tied back in a neat style. Behind them, Dr. Yuna Choi carried a data tablet, her fingers already scrolling through documents that had been sent to them an hour before. "This is it," Taeyong whispered. "First time humans get to see the Galactic Council in person." Hana nodded but said nothing. Her face showed no emotion as the massive doors opened. The sound echoed through the chamber, like thunder. All 847 species turned to look at the three humans walking down the long pathway to the center stage. The walk took 5 minutes. Taeyong noticed how some aliens looked at them with curiosity, but others looked afraid. Why would they be afraid? Humans had been in space for only 127 years. They were babies compared to these ancient civilizations. At the center of the chamber stood Counselor Vreth. The being was 12 feet tall and made of blue crystal that pulsed with inner light. When Vreth spoke, the sound came from everywhere, at once. "Humans of Earth," Vreth said, "you have been summoned to accept your place in the Galactic Council. We are pleased to welcome you." But Vreth's voice did not sound pleased. It sounded cold and formal. Another figure stepped forward. This one was covered in green scales and walked on 2 powerful legs. High Magistrate Kelthor of the Saurian Confederacy held a glowing data cube in his clawed hand. "The integration protocols," Kelthor announced. "Every species must accept these terms to join the Council. They have existed for 12,000 years. No exceptions are made." The cube projected a holographic document into the air. It was massive, thousands of pages long. Numbers and legal terms floated in the space above them. Yuna quickly scanned the first sections on her tablet, while Hana read in silence. Taeyong felt his stomach drop as he read the terms. Military fleet reduction to 0.01% of current size. That meant Earth would have to destroy 99% of their ships, 40% taxation on all trade between stars. Surrender of all faster-than-light technology patents to Council control. Council oversight of every human colony world. This was not an invitation. This was a surrender document. Hana's face remained calm as she read page after page. The chamber stayed completely silent. Alien species watched them with those nervous eyes again. Taeyong suddenly understood. They were not afraid of humans. They were afraid of what humans might do. Yuna leaned close to Hana and whispered so quietly that only the 3 humans could hear. "Ambassador, these are not negotiations. Every clause strips our sovereignty. If we sign this, Earth becomes a vassal state." Hana's finger stopped scrolling. She had reached page 4200. The section detailed how Council enforcers could occupy any human world without permission if they suspected violations. Further down, another clause gave the Council power to remove and replace human government officials. "Captain Kim," Hana said quietly, "in your military assessment, what happens if we reduce our fleet as they demand?" Taeyong did not hesitate. "We become defenseless. Any species could attack us, and we could not fight back. We would depend entirely on Council protection." "And do you trust their protection?" Taeyong looked around the chamber again. 847 species. All of them had accepted these same protocols. All of them looked worried, not welcoming. Some even looked jealous, as if they wished they could do what they thought humans might do. "No, Ambassador, I do not trust them." Counselor Vreth's crystal form pulsed brighter. "You have 72 hours to review and accept the integration protocols. This is standard procedure. All species require time to understand their great fortune in joining us. Great fortune. The words rang hollow in the massive chamber. Hana closed the document on her tablet. She stood up straight and looked directly at Vreth's glowing form. The entire council held its breath. "We need to go home," Hana said. 5 words. Simple and clear. The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens began shouting in hundreds of different languages. The translation devices built into the room struggled to keep up. Vreth's crystal form flashed bright red. "You cannot leave," Kelthor roared. "No species has ever left before accepting." But Hana was already walking toward the exit. Taeyang and Yuna followed immediately. The captain's hand rested on his sidearm, not drawing it, just ready. The noise grew louder behind them. Some aliens were standing now, pointing at the humans. Others were arguing among themselves. "Ambassador Park," Vreth's voice boomed across the chamber. "You do not understand the opportunity you are rejecting." Hana stopped at the doorway. She turned back to face the council. One last time. "I understand perfectly," she said. "You are offering us slavery, dressed up as partnership. We came here hoping for friends. Instead, we found a protection racket." The words hit like a bomb. Several aliens gasped. Others looked away in shame. A few nodded slowly, as if finally hearing someone say what they had always known, but never dared to speak. Hana turned and walked out. The doors closed behind the 3 humans, with a heavy sound that echoed forever. Inside the chamber, chaos continued. Vreth called for order, but nobody listened. Kelthor was shouting at other counselors. A small, slug-like creature named Trademaster Quillix looked terrified, its eye stalks shaking. "They refused," Quillix whispered. "They actually refused. What happens now?" Nobody had an answer. In 12,000 years, this had never happened before. Species either accepted or were destroyed before they could spread their defiance. But humans had 40 colony worlds, a large military fleet, and a unified government. They were not weak. They were not alone. And they had just walked away. On the human ship Defiant Hope, Taeyang looked at Hana with respect and fear. "What did we just do?" he asked. Hana stared at the stars through the viewport. "We told the truth. Now, we prepare for war." 30 days passed, and Earth said nothing. The Galactic Council sent 472 messages during that time. Every message went unanswered. Every communication channel stayed silent. The humans had gone dark. On the Grand Nexus, Counselor Vreth called emergency session after emergency session. The crystal being's glow had turned from blue to purple, a sign of stress among the luminary species. Around the council table sat representatives from the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. "This is unprecedented," Vreth said. "In 12,000 years, no species has simply ignored us." Trademaster Quillix shifted his slug-like body nervously. "They must respond. The protocols require acceptance within 90 days, or military enforcement begins." High Magistrate Kelthor slammed his clawed fist on the table. "Then, we begin enforcement immediately. Show them what happens to species who defy the council." But several other counselors looked uncertain. A female representative from the Moth Collective spoke in a soft voice that somehow filled the room. "The humans are different from previous species. They have 40 colony worlds. Their military is substantial. They discovered faster than light travel on their own. They were not desperate when we found them." Vreth knew she was right. That was the problem. For 12,000 years, the Council had used the same strategy. Find young species just as they reach the stars. Offer them protection and technology. Make them dependent. Lock them into the integration protocols before they grew strong enough to refuse. But humanity had spread fast. Too fast. They had colonized aggressively and built defensive fleets before first contact. When the Council finally reached out, humans already controlled significant territory and resources. "What are they doing during this silence?" Kelthor demanded. Nobody knew. And that terrified them. On Earth, In the United Nations headquarters, Premier Minho Kang sat in a secure conference room. Around the table were the most important leaders of humanity. Ambassador Hana Park had returned from the Grand Nexus. Envoy Ji-won Nam, young but brilliant, took notes on everything. "Give me the military assessment," Premier Kang said. Admiral Salmon pulled up holographic displays showing ship counts, weapons capabilities, and defensive positions. "We have 3,800 combat vessels. The Council commands approximately 50,000 from their combined species. In a straight fight, we lose." "But," Hana prompted. Salmon smiled slightly. "But we are not planning a straight fight. Our ships are newer, our weapons are kinetic-based rather than energy-based, and our tactics are untested by them. We have advantages they do not expect. More importantly, our people are unified. The Council is a coalition of hundreds of species with different goals." Premier Kang nodded slowly. "What about our colonies? All 40 worlds are fortifying. We are moving construction ships to build orbital defenses. Civilian populations are being trained for emergency protocols. If war comes, we will make them bleed for every planet." Envoy Ji-won spoke up. "Premier, if I may, starting a war is not our only option. Perhaps we can negotiate better terms?" Hana shook her head. "I have analyzed the protocols from every angle. There are no better terms. Every clause is designed to make us dependent and weak. They do not want partners, Ji-won. They want subjects." "But why?" the young envoy asked. "Why would an advanced civilization want to dominate others?" It was a good question. Hana pulled up her own research, months of analysis that she had conducted in secret. "I believe the Galactic Council is not what it appears. They present themselves as a benevolent organization. But look at the economic data. The integration protocols funnel enormous wealth, from younger species to elder species, through taxation and technology fees." She displayed financial records that her team had intercepted. 40% of all trade goes to Council administration. That money never gets distributed fairly. It goes to the oldest, most powerful civilizations. They have built their prosperity on the backs of younger species. Premier Kang studied the data. "It is a pyramid scheme on a galactic scale." "Exactly," Hana confirmed. "And we are the first species strong enough to refuse participation. That is why they are panicking. If we refuse and survive, others will question the system." Admiral Salmon leaned forward. "So we are not just fighting for our own freedom. We are threatening their entire power structure." "Yes." The room fell silent for a long moment. Then Premier Kang spoke. "We have a choice to make. We can accept the protocols, give up our sovereignty, and live as subjects. Or we can refuse and fight for our freedom, knowing that victory is not guaranteed." "I say we fight," Admiral Salmon said immediately. Hana nodded. "I agree. Freedom is worth the risk." Envoy Ji-won looked at the older leaders with admiration and fear. "What if we are wrong? What if the Council is trying to protect us from something worse?" Premier Kang smiled sadly. "Then they should have asked us to be partners, not slaves. We do not negotiate with bullies, Ji-won. We prepare to defend ourselves." The decision was made. While Earth prepared, the Galactic Council grew more desperate. Trade Master Quillix called a private meeting with Vreeth and several other key counselors. "We must make them accept," Quillix said, his voice shaking. "Do you understand how much wealth the protocols generate? If humans refuse and survive, the younger species will rebel. They will demand renegotiation. The entire system will collapse." Vreeth's crystal form pulsed with anger. "You speak of wealth, while I speak of order. For 12,000 years, the Council has maintained peace through the protocols. If humans break free, then we must destroy them before that happens," Kelthor growled. But a new voice entered the conversation. It belonged to an ancient being whose species had been part of the Council since its founding. We have destroyed 83 species for refusing the protocols. Each time, we claimed they were threats to galactic peace. Each time, we lied. They were only threats to our control. The room went quiet. The humans have discovered our secret. The Ancient One continued. They know the protocols are slavery. If we attack them and fail, the truth spreads. If we attack them and succeed, we prove their point. We are trapped by our own deception. Vreth knew it was true. The Council had built its power on a foundation of lies. They claimed to offer protection, but they created dependency. They claimed to promote cooperation, but they enforced submission. And now, for the first time in 12,000 years, someone was calling their bluff. What do you suggest? Vreth asked. The ancient being's form dimmed with sadness. I suggest we prepare for the end of the old order. The humans will not submit, and when they survive our attacks, others will follow their example. The Council, as we know it, is already dead. We just do not know it yet. On Earth, as Day 30 of Silence ended, Premier Kang authorized a single message to be sent to the Galactic Council. It was short and simple. We refuse your protocols. We claim our right to exist as a free and sovereign species. If you want war, we will give you war. But we will never submit. The message reached the Grand Nexus 12 hours later. When it did, Counselor Vreth knew everything had changed. The old galaxy was dying. A new one was being born. And it was being born in blood and fire. Commander Daeho Shin had not slept in 40 hours. His eyes burned as he stared at the screens in front of him, watching data streams flow past at incredible speeds. He ran Earth's intelligence division, and right now he was hunting for secrets that could save humanity. Commander, one of his analysts called out. We have intercepted another encrypted transmission between Council Corps members. Daeho moved to the analyst's station. Can we break it? Not with our systems. But I know someone who might help. The analyst pulled up a profile. The image showed a young woman with sharp eyes and a slight smile. Her name was Nari Lim, but in the digital world, she was known only as the Veil. She was Earth's most skilled hacker, someone who had broken into corporate and government systems just to prove she could. She had never been caught. Contact her, Daeho ordered. Tell her we need her skills to save humanity. If that does not work, tell her the Council's encryption is supposed to be unbreakable. 3 hours later, Nari sat in a secure facility, surrounded by the most advanced computers Earth had built. She cracked her knuckles and smiled. Let me see what you have. The encrypted Council transmissions appeared on her screens. To most people, they looked like random noise. To Nari, they were a puzzle waiting to be solved. She worked for 62 hours straight, living on coffee and determination. Her fingers flew across keyboards, while code scrolled past, faster than normal eyes could follow. She tried 1,000 different approaches, failed 1,000 times, and kept going. On the 63rd hour, something clicked. I am in, she whispered. The encryption fell apart like a house made of cards. Suddenly, the transmissions became readable. Daeho rushed to her station as files began downloading. Thousands of them. Millions of them. What is this? He asked. Nari's face had gone pale. It is their archive. Everything. 12,000 years of secrets. They found it buried in the deepest section of the database. It was called the Suppression Archives. Daeho opened the first file with shaking hands. The file contained a complete record of a species called the Corvalli. They had been peaceful explorers who loved art and science. 800 years ago, the Council had offered them the integration protocols. The Corvalli had refused. They believed cooperation should be voluntary, not forced. 6 months after their refusal, a Council fleet arrived at their homeworld. The file contained official reports claiming the Corvalli were developing planet-killing weapons. The reports were lies. The Corvalli had no such weapons. The Council destroyed them anyway. 50 billion beings died in 3 days. Daeho felt sick. He opened another file. Then another. 83 species total. All had refused the protocols. All had been declared galactic threats. All had been exterminated. They murder anyone who says no, Nari said quietly. Dr. Yuna Choi arrived at the intelligence facility an hour later. She had been analyzing council biology and culture, trying to understand how their civilization worked. Now she studied the suppression archives with horror. There is a pattern, she said after reviewing the data. The council always waits 6 months after refusal. They use that time to fabricate evidence of weapons development or hostile intent. Then they present this false evidence to their member species to justify military action. Why 6 months? Deho asked. Because that is how long it takes to move their largest fleets into position. They want overwhelming force to ensure quick victory. No witnesses, no survivors, no one to dispute their lies. Deho checked the timeline. Humanity had refused the protocols 37 days ago. They had roughly 5 months before the council fleet would arrive. Captain Taeyang Kim received orders to take his ship, the Defiant Hope, on a secret mission. He was told to travel to a region of space called the Graveyard Nebula. It was far from any inhabited systems, just empty space filled with cosmic dust and radiation. What are we looking for? His first officer asked. Evidence, Taeyang replied. Evidence of a crime. They found it on the 3rd day of searching. At first it looked like natural debris, but when they got closer, the truth became clear. These were ship fragments, pieces of stations, remnants of satellites. All of it was old, damaged by centuries of radiation and impacts. But it was not natural. This was the graveyard of a civilization. Taeyang's crew worked carefully, collecting samples and scanning for data. They found pieces of technology that was more advanced than current human designs. They found art and writing in an alien language. They found the bones of beings who had died in the vacuum of space when their ships were destroyed. The writing was eventually translated. It told the story of the Korvali, a species who had loved exploring the stars. They had built beautiful ships and peaceful stations. They had composed music that could be played across entire solar systems. They had harmed no one. The council killed them all anyway. Taeyang recorded everything. He made sure every piece of evidence was documented. Every fragment was catalogued. This would be proof that the council was not a force for peace. It was a protection racket that eliminated anyone who threatened its control. When he returned to Earth, Premier Minho Kang looked at the evidence with cold fury. They have been doing this for 12,000 years? Yes, Premier, Deho confirmed. 83 species destroyed, trillions of beings murdered, and every member species of the Council participated or looked the other way. Ambassador Hana Park studied the data. This changes everything. We are not just fighting for our own freedom anymore. We are fighting for justice, for all those murdered species who never got a chance to tell their story. Premier Kang made a decision that would shake the galaxy. Release everything. Send the suppression archives to every council member world. Broadcast it on all public channels. Let every being in the galaxy see what their governments have done. Premier, Envoy, Jiwan warned. If we do this, we make it impossible for the council to back down. They will have to attack us to maintain their legitimacy. They were always going to attack us, Hana said. At least this way, some of their member species might refuse to participate. The data began transmitting 12 hours later. Nari had made sure it could not be blocked or stopped. It spread across the galaxy like a wave, reaching 847 different worlds within days. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. On some worlds, governments tried to suppress the information and failed. On others, populations took to the streets demanding answers. A few governments immediately announced investigations into their own historical records. On the Grand Nexus, Councillor Vreth watched as the council descended into chaos. Representatives screamed at each other. Some denied everything. Others admitted guilt. and begged forgiveness. A few species announced they were withdrawing from the council immediately. War Marshal Tectrus, a four-armed insectoid general who commanded the council's combined military forces, slammed all four fists on his podium. "Enough!" he roared. "The humans have declared war on us. They have revealed classified information and turned our own people against us. We must respond with overwhelming force immediately." Vreth's crystal form flashed red with anger. "If we attack now and fail, we prove everything they said about us. If we attack and succeed, we prove it anyway. We are damned either way. Then we make sure we succeed," Tectrus growled. "I am mobilizing the punishment fleet. 5,000 warships from 200 species. We will crush the humans and make an example of them. No species will ever defy us again." But even as he spoke, Tectrus knew something had changed. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Council's legitimacy was being questioned. Younger species were asking dangerous questions. Some were secretly contacting Earth. A message reached Premier Kang from an unknown source. It was encrypted with codes that should not exist outside of Council systems. When decoded, it contained a simple question. "You showed us the truth. Now show us how to be free. Tell us how you plan to survive, and we will help if we can." The message was signed by representatives from 40 different species. Young civilizations that had been forced into the protocols just like the Council wanted to force humanity. Hana read the message and smiled for the first time in weeks. "We are not alone anymore." Admiral Salmon Lee stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable and watched the approaching fleet through her view screen. 5,000 alien warships had emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. They arranged themselves in attack formation, blocking out the stars with their massive hulls. "Size comparison?" she asked calmly. Her tactical officer's voice shook slightly. "Admiral, the smallest of their ships is twice the size of our largest. The biggest ones are the size of moons. We count 5,317 vessels from 200 different species." Salmon nodded. Earth's entire defensive fleet numbered only 500 ships. They were outnumbered more than 10 to 1. On paper, this was not a battle. It was an execution. "What are our advantages?" she asked. The tactical officer pulled up analysis data. "Their fleet is a coalition force. 200 species means 200 different command structures, weapon systems, and tactical doctrines. They have never trained together. We have. Our fleet is unified under one command. Our ships are newer and faster. Our weapons are kinetic-based, which they have little experience defending against. And our secret weapons?" The officer smiled grimly. "Deployed and waiting, Admiral." War Marshal Tectrus sent his demand from the Council flagship. His four-armed form appeared on every screen in Earth orbit. "Humans of Earth, you have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. Deactivate your military, accept the integration protocols, and submit to Council authority. Refuse, and we will show you what happens to species who defy the natural order of the galaxy." On Earth, Premier Minho Kang stood in the United Nations building, watching the same broadcast. Around him, the leaders of every nation and colony waited for his response. The room was silent, except for the sound of breathing. "Are we ready?" he asked Admiral Salmon over the communication link. "As ready as we will ever be, Premier. Then let us show them what free people fight like." Premier Kang's response was broadcast across every channel, reaching not just the Council fleet but every inhabited world in the galaxy. He stood straight, wearing a simple suit, looking directly into the camera. "War Marshal Tectrus, we have reviewed your demands. Our answer is no. We will not surrender. We will not submit. We will not kneel to tyrants who have murdered 83 civilizations and lied about it for 12,000 years. You come to our home with your fleet and think numbers alone will break us. You are wrong. 4. We would rather die free than live as slaves. So come, if you must. But know this. Every ship you lose, every soldier who dies, will be on your conscience. This war is your choice, not ours. The broadcast ended. The galaxy held its breath, but something else was happening that the Council did not expect. Envoy Jiwan Nam had spent the past weeks in secret communication with representatives from younger Council species. These were civilizations that had been forced into the protocols within the last 1,000 years, species that still remembered what freedom felt like. Jiwan met them in hidden locations, using encrypted channels that Nari had created. There were 40 species in total, each sending 1 or 2 representatives. They called themselves the Free Systems Coalition. "We cannot openly support you," one representative said. "Our governments are bound by council law. If we rebel, we face the same punishment you are about to receive." "I understand," Jiwan replied, "but there are other ways to help. Even if you cannot fight with us, perhaps you can refuse to fight against us?" That idea spread like fire through the group. 127 species within the Council fleet began experiencing problems. Ships reported engine malfunctions. Weapons systems failed safety inspections. Crew members fell mysteriously ill. Nothing major, nothing that could be proven as sabotage. Just enough to slow the fleet's response. Meanwhile, on the colony world of New Sol, a young woman named Rena O recorded a message from her small apartment. She was not a soldier or a politician. She was a teacher who worked with refugee children from various species. Her message was simple and honest. "My name is Rena. I teach children from 6 different species on New Sol. Yesterday, those children asked me if they were going to die because their governments joined the Council fleet. I told them no. I told them that free people protect each other, regardless of species. The Council says we must submit or be destroyed. But I have a question for every being watching this. Is that really the galaxy you want to live in? Where children die because their parents dared to ask for freedom?" The message went viral across 400 worlds. Rena's face appeared on protest signs. Her words were repeated in hundreds of languages. She had not meant to start a movement, but she did anyway. The Council's deadline passed. War Marshal Tectrus gave the order to attack. The Battle of Sol began at exactly 0600 hours. Earth Standard Time. The Council fleet advanced in waves, their energy weapons charging, their massive ships accelerating toward the defensive grid. Admiral Salmon waited until they crossed the first marker line. Then she gave a single word: activate. Space itself seemed to explode. Hidden mines that had been placed in precise patterns detonated in sequence, creating a wall of kinetic shrapnel moving at incredible speeds. The Council's forward ships ran straight into it. Energy shields designed to stop laser and plasma weapons were useless against physical projectiles, moving at a significant fraction of light speed. 70 ships were destroyed in the first 30 seconds. The Council fleet scattered in confusion. This was not how space battles were supposed to work. They had expected an exchange of energy, fire, shields, versus weapons. Instead, humans had turned basic physics into a weapon. Captain Tae-young Kim commanded the carrier group Indomitable from his bridge. He watched the Council fleet regroup and prepare for a second attack. This time they were more careful, advancing slowly, scanning for more mines. "Launch the drones," he ordered. Thousands of small autonomous craft deployed from human ships. They were too small to carry crew, but each one carried a nuclear warhead and basic AI guidance. The drones swarmed toward the Council fleet like angry insects. The enemy tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. Hundreds of drones were destroyed, but hundreds more got through. They did not target the big warships. Instead, they went for support vessels, supply ships, and communication arrays. The Council fleet began to fragment. Without proper communication, the 200 different species started using their own tactical doctrines. Some advanced aggressively. Others held back defensively. The unified front collapsed into chaos, but the Council still had overwhelming numbers. For every human ship, there were 10 enemy vessels. Admiral Salmon's fleet was taking heavy losses. Ships exploded in bright flashes. Thousands of sailors died in seconds. Taeyong's own ship was hit by 3 plasma torpedoes. The Indomitable shook violently. Alarms blared. Sections of the hull were breached. "Damage report!" he shouted. "Engineering is gone. We have lost 30% of crew. Weapons at half capacity." Taeyong made a decision that he knew would be his last. All power to engines. Set course directly for the Council flagship. Ramming speed. All, N. His crew stared at him. Then, one by one, they nodded. If they were going to die, they would take the enemy command with them. The Indomitable accelerated toward War Marshal Tektrus's massive command ship. The Council fleet tried to intercept, but human ships covered Taeyong's approach. They sacrificed themselves to clear a path. Tektrus saw what was happening and ordered evasive maneuvers. But his ship was too large, too slow. The Indomitable struck at full speed, its nuclear reactor going critical at the moment of impact. The explosion lit up the solar system like a second sun. When the light faded, both ships were gone. War Marshal Tektrus and Captain Taeyong Kim died together, along with 30,000 crew members from both sides. The Council fleet faltered. Their commander was dead. Their formation was broken. They had lost over 1,000 ships and gained nothing. Then something impossible happened. New ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. 40 fleets representing 40 different species. But these were not Council reinforcements. These were ships from the Free Systems Coalition. They positioned themselves between the Council fleet and Earth. Their weapons were powered up. Their shields active. The lead ship broadcast a message that every being in the galaxy heard. The Galactic Council does not speak for us anymore. We stand with Earth. We stand for freedom. Attack them, and you attack us all. The Council fleet stopped advancing. They were now outnumbered. They had lost their commander. Their member species were in rebellion. Councillor Vreth, watching from the Grand Nexus, knew it was over. The old order had fallen. Everything had changed. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Sol. The Graveyard Nebula, once a silent memorial to murdered species, now held a new monument. It was a massive structure built from donated materials from 300 different worlds. On its surface were carved the names of 83 extinct civilizations, including the Corvalli. At the bottom, in letters 10 meters tall, was a simple phrase in every known language: "Never again." Ambassador Hannah Park stood before the monument during its dedication ceremony. Representatives from 412 species had come to witness this moment. Some cried. Others stood in respectful silence. A few, from the oldest Council species, looked away in shame. "We built this," Hannah said, her voice broadcast across the galaxy. "Not to celebrate our victory, but to remember the cost of tyranny. 83 species died because they wanted to be free. Billions of beings were murdered because they refused to submit. We cannot bring them back, but we can make sure their deaths meant something. We can build a galaxy where no one is ever forced to choose between freedom and survival again." The monument's eternal flame was lit by Rena. Oh, the teacher from New Seoul, who had become a symbol of resistance. She had lost her home during the battle, when a Council ship crashed into the colony's main city, but she had survived. And now, she stood as proof that ordinary people could change history. Premier Minho Kang watched the ceremony from Earth. He looked older now, the weight of command showing in new lines on his face. Around him in the government center were the people who had helped win the war and the peace that followed. Admiral Salmon Lee had been promoted to Supreme Commander of the Coalition Defense Force. It was not easy work, but she had learned that building peace was harder than fighting wars. Commander Daeho Shin ran an intelligence network that now shared information freely between allied species. The days of secrets and deception were meant to be over, though he knew some old habits died hard. Dr. Yuna Choi had founded the first interspecies university on New Seoul. rebuilt after the battle. Students from 300 species came to learn together. She taught them science and culture, but more importantly, she taught them that cooperation was stronger than domination. Envoy Jiwan Nam, no longer young and uncertain, had become one of the coalition's most skilled diplomats. He spent his days mediating disputes between species, helping them find common ground. It was exhausting work, but it mattered. Nari Lim, the hacker known as the Veil, now worked openly as the coalition's chief information security officer. She made sure that communication channels stayed open and free, that no one could control information the way the old council had. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. 289 species remained loyal to the old system, mostly elder civilizations that had profited most from the integration protocols. They had retreated to their core territories and maintained their hierarchy. But 412 species had signed the Sovereign Systems Accord, the new charter that Ambassador Hannah Park had helped write. Its principles were simple. Membership was voluntary. Representation was equal regardless of species size or age. No taxation without representation. Each species maintained complete military sovereignty. Trade was free and open. Decisions required consensus, not majority vote. It was messier than the old system. Debates in the coalition assembly could last for weeks. Species argued loudly and passionately. Progress was slow, but it was real progress, not enforced compliance. Councillor Vreth had surprised everyone by leaving the old council and joining the coalition. The crystal being's glow had changed from purple to a soft blue, a sign of peace among the Luminari. Vreth now served as an advisor, using knowledge of the old system to help build something better. One evening, Vreth met privately with Hannah in her office on Earth. Through the window, they could see the lights of the rebuilt cities glowing against the night. "I owe your species an apology," Vreth said. "For 12,000 years, my people participated in the protocols. We told ourselves we were maintaining order, preventing chaos. But we were just protecting our own power and wealth. The Luminari Empire profited greatly from the suffering of younger species." Hannah poured tea for both of them, a human custom that Vreth had learned to appreciate. "You are here now. You are helping build something better. That matters more than apologies." "Does it?" Vreth's glow dimmed with sadness. "How many species died because we were cowards? How many civilizations could have flourished if we had offered partnership instead of slavery?" "I cannot answer that," Hannah admitted. "But I know this. The galaxy is changing because your people chose to change. Not all of them, but enough. Some of the elder species are still clinging to the old ways, but others are learning. That gives me hope." Across the galaxy, on a small trading station near the frontier, a scene was playing out that would have been impossible a year ago. A young human boy named Hyun Bae sat in a classroom with students from 15 different species. His best friend was a refugee from a species that had fought against humanity in the battle. Their teacher, an elderly being from one of the eldest species, was explaining the history of the integration protocols. "We were wrong," the teacher said simply. "My government participated in terrible crimes. Many species in this room have governments that did the same. We cannot change the past. But you, the young ones, you can build a different future." Hyun raised his hand. "How do we make sure it never happens again?" The teacher's expression was sad but proud. "By asking questions like that. By never accepting that something is right just because it is old or traditional. By standing up for freedom, even when it is dangerous. Your human ancestors did that. Now it is your turn. All of you. Regardless of species." After class, Hyun and his friend walked through the station's common area. Beings from hundreds of species moved through the corridors, trading goods, sharing meals, arguing about politics. It was chaotic and loud, and sometimes confusing. "My parents says this is what freedom looks like," Hyun's friend said. It is messy. Hyun laughed. My grandmother says humans are good at messy. She says we have been arguing with each other for thousands of years, and we still have not figured everything out. Wonder, hierants, but you keep trying. Yeah, we do. On Earth, Premier Minho Kang prepared for his final address before stepping down from leadership. He had served through the war and the first year of peace. Now, it was time for someone else to guide humanity forward. He stood before the Coalition Assembly, with representatives from 412 species watching. Some were physically present. Others appeared as holograms from distant worlds. When we refused the integration protocols, he began, we did not know if we would survive. We only knew that we could not submit. Some called it stubbornness. Others called it stupidity. Perhaps it was both. But it was also necessary. He paused, looking around the chamber. The Galactic Council told us that order required submission. They said freedom would bring chaos. They were half right. Look at this assembly. We argue constantly. Decisions take forever. Some days, I think the old system was more efficient. Nervous laughter rippled through the chamber. But efficiency is not the same as justice. Kang continued. The old system was efficient at extracting wealth from the weak and giving it to the strong. It was efficient at silencing dissent and murdering those who dared to resist. That kind of efficiency we do not need. He gestured to the assembled representatives. What we have built is imperfect. It is loud and messy and sometimes frustrating. But it is ours. We chose it freely. No one forced us to cooperate. We do it because we believe that working together as equals is better than living under tyranny. The chamber fell silent. I am stepping down today, Kang said. New leaders will take my place. Human and non-human alike. They will make mistakes, just as I have. But they will make them as free beings, not as subjects. And that makes all the difference. The assembly stood and applauded, not because it was required, but because they wanted to. That night, Hana Park found Kang looking at the stars from an observation deck. She joined him in comfortable silence. Do you think it will last? Kang asked. What we built? Hana considered the question carefully. I think it will last as long as people remember why we built it. As long as they remember the price of freedom and the cost of tyranny. As long as they stay vigilant. And when they forget, then someone will remind them. That is the thing about freedom. It requires constant work, constant attention, but it is worth it. End quote. Far away, beyond Coalition and Council space, human exploration ships pushed into uncharted territory. They were not alone. Vessels from dozens of species flew alongside them, exploring together as partners. They discovered new worlds, contacted new species, and learned new things. Sometimes they disagreed on how to approach first contact. Sometimes they argued about what to do with new discoveries, but they worked it out together, through discussion and compromise. One exploration crew made first contact with a young species, just beginning to reach for the stars. The species was frightened, uncertain, wondering if the older civilizations would help or hurt them. The human captain, a young woman who had studied under Hana Park, smiled and offered a simple message. We are not here to rule you or to force you into anything. We are here to offer friendship and cooperation, if you want it. The choice is yours. It will always be yours. The young species accepted, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. They joined the coalition not because they had to, but because they chose to. And the galaxy kept changing, one choice at a time. Years later, historians would look back on this time and call it the Great Awakening. They would study how one species' refusal to submit had sparked a revolution that changed galactic civilization. They would analyze the tactics of the Battle of Saul and the diplomacy that followed. But what they would remember most was simpler than that. They would remember that when humanity was told to kneel, they refused. They would remember that when faced with overwhelming force, they fought anyway. They would remember that, when given the choice between comfortable slavery and dangerous freedom, they chose freedom. And they would remember that their choice gave others the courage to do the same. The galaxy would never be the same. It was louder now, messier, more chaotic. But it was also more free, more just, more alive. And that was worth everything.